It's been 7 long years since Lily and her father vanished without a trace on that cruise ship. No clues, no answers, just an empty cabin and a devastated mother. But today, as Claire walks down a quiet alley, something catches her eye, something that will change everything. What she sees will shake her to the core, and the questions that haunted her for years will finally begin to find answers. Claire sat at her kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her, staring at the photo on the mantel. It had been 7 years since that fateful day, the day that Lily, her little girl, and Mark, her husband, disappeared without a trace. Their vacation on the cruise had turned into her worst nightmare. One moment, they were laughing on the deck, enjoying the breeze, and the next, nothing. No sign of them, no calls, nothing. The investigation had been thorough at first. There were posters, interviews, and endless questions from the media. But after the initial search, the cruise line declared it a mystery with no evidence of foul play. The authorities couldn't do anything. Mark and Lily were gone, and Claire was left with nothing but an empty cabin, unanswered questions, and a heartache that never faded. Claire had tried everything to move on. She spent years in therapy, looking for ways to heal, but there were days she couldn't leave the house. It was too much to bear. The hole left in her heart from losing both of them was unbearable. Every night, she went to bed wondering if they were alive. But no one could answer that. No one knew where they were or what had happened to them. The world seemed to go on, but Claire had remained stuck in that painful moment, frozen in time. Now, 7 years later, Claire had somehow managed to get by. She worked from home, kept herself busy, and occasionally allowed herself to feel the briefest moments of hope that somehow, somewhere, they were still out there. It was supposed to be the perfect family vacation. The kind of trip Mark and Claire had dreamed of since their wedding. A cruise around the Caribbean with a few days of sun, relaxation, and family bonding. Lily had been so excited, her small face lighting up when she saw the ship. It was their first big adventure together. Claire could still hear Lily's laughter as they boarded, the way Mark had teased her about the buffet. But that night, something shifted. The ship's party had ended, and Mark had decided to take Lily for a walk on the deck before they went to bed. Claire had stayed behind, thinking nothing of it. The ship was large, and there were plenty of areas for families to enjoy. It wasn't unusual for them to go out for a while. It was supposed to be just a quick stroll. When Claire awoke the next morning, she was alone in the cabin. At first, she thought Mark and Lily were sleeping in late, but when she went to check the adjoining room, the bed was untouched. Panic set in quickly, but she thought maybe they'd gone out for breakfast, maybe something unexpected had happened. She tried calling Mark's phone, no answer. And then the calls started coming in. The cruise staff. The police. A search was underway. No one had seen them leave the cabin, and there were no signs of foul play. No trace of them anywhere. The investigation began, but nothing turned up. The security footage from the night before didn't show anything unusual. Mark and Lily had simply vanished. Days turned into weeks. The cruise line issued a statement saying it was a mystery, nothing to indicate foul play, but nothing to explain where they'd gone either. Claire couldn't process it. The unanswered questions lingered. Did they fall overboard? Were they taken? She couldn't accept the idea that they had simply disappeared. 7 years had passed since that fateful night, and Claire had tried to live a semblance of a normal life. She couldn't fully move on, of course, but she had found a way to survive. She had become numb to the constant ache, though it still gnawed at her every day. The pain didn't hit as hard now, but it was always there, simmering beneath the surface. She still kept their things in her closet. Lily's stuffed bear, Mark's favorite jacket, the cruise souvenirs they had bought. She would go through them sometimes, running her fingers over the familiar objects, trying to hold onto memories of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She couldn't let go of them, not completely. The last few years had been the hardest. The calls from the authorities had stopped, the investigation had been closed, and the case was now classified as cold. No new leads had emerged, and people started to move on. It was hard for Claire to find the strength to keep searching. No one else was looking anymore. But Claire had never given up on the hope that one day, something would lead her to Mark and Lily. Every year, she would revisit the spot where they had last been seen, looking for any clues, hoping that one day, someone would remember something, or the truth would finally be revealed. But for the most part, she had started to accept that they were gone. And that acceptance, while painful, allowed her to function, if only for survival. But everything was about to change. Claire had been walking home from the grocery store when it happened. The street was lined with the usual small shops, the hum of traffic in the distance. It was a late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows along the sidewalk. She had no plans, just the familiar routine she had become accustomed to. As she turned the corner onto her street, Claire passed an alley. The sound of footsteps behind her made her glance over her shoulder. It was strange. There were people all around her, but this particular alley seemed quieter than usual. She was about to ignore it and keep walking when something caught her eye. At the far end of the alley, there was a small figure standing still, facing away from her. It looked like a child. The figure was small, maybe no more than 7 or 8 years old. Claire's heart skipped a beat, and she stopped in her tracks. Her first instinct was to make sure the child was okay, but there was something about the figure that made her hesitate. A strange, familiar feeling lingered in her chest. And then the child turned around. For a split second, Claire's breath caught in her throat. The child had blonde hair, just like Lily's. Her face was partially obscured by shadows, but Claire swore she recognized those eyes. She couldn't see them clearly, but the shape of the face, the posture, it felt like everything inside her had frozen. The child looked up at her, and for a moment, Claire thought she was imagining things. But the child spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Mom," the child asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Claire's legs felt like they might give way beneath her. The voice, her daughter's voice, was unmistakable. But it couldn't be. It had been 7 years. How could it be Lily? Claire took a hesitant step forward, her breath catching in her chest. "Lily," she whispered, her voice breaking as she struggled to make sense of what was happening. The girl's face was still obscured by the shadows, but Claire's heart raced. She couldn't tear her eyes away from her. The child's head tilted slightly, and Claire could see a familiar glimmer in her eyes, the same bright blue that had always reminded her of the ocean. The realization hit her all at once. This was Lily. But how? How could it be? Claire moved closer, her feet seemingly unable to keep up with her racing thoughts. She reached out, gently lifting the child's chin to see her face more clearly. And then, everything seemed to fall into place. The child's hair had grown longer, her features had changed, but it was her. It was Lily. Claire's heart shattered into a million pieces as the flood of emotions, anger, relief, confusion, washed over her. Lily looked up at her, tears in her eyes. "I didn't know how to come back," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Claire took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. "How is this possible?" Lily's eyes were wide, filled with a mix of fear and relief as she slowly began to explain. She took Claire's hand, pulling her to the side, away from the busy street. "I don't remember everything," Lily began, "but I know it wasn't my fault. We were on the cruise, and then, it all happened so fast. There were people, bad people. They took us, Mom. I don't know why, but they wouldn't let us leave." Claire's heart sank. Her thoughts raced, trying to piece together the fragments of Lily's words. "Who took you? What?" Lily shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. "I don't know. But they made Dad and me stay with them. They said if we tried to leave or tell anyone, they'd hurt us. I couldn't tell you, Mom. I was scared. They wouldn't let us." Her voice cracked, and she looked up at Claire with wide, desperate eyes. Mark's disappearance, the secrecy, it was all becoming clear now. They hadn't vanished. They had been taken, forced into hiding for reasons that Lily couldn't fully understand. "I tried to come back. I really did. But they told me if I left, they would come after you too. I couldn't let that happen. I had to stay away." Lily wiped her tears, looking at Claire with an almost pleading expression. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know how to find you." Claire hugged Lily tightly, feeling the weight of the years slip away, replaced by the flood of emotions she had kept buried for so long. Mark, Lily, the years of wondering, all of it. It was all finally making sense. After everything that had happened, Claire knew that the road to recovery would be long. There were still so many unanswered questions. But one thing was clear, Lily was here, alive, and in her arms once more. The next few weeks were a blur. They spoke to authorities, to the police, and slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to come together. It wasn't just a random kidnapping. It was a complex network of people, hiding in plain sight, using their power to control and manipulate. Mark's role in all of it remained unclear, but Claire was determined to learn the truth. Through the chaos, Claire realized that the most important thing was Lily. They would rebuild their lives together, one step at a time. And as Claire looked at her daughter, safe and sound, she knew that no matter how dark the past had been, they had each other now. That was enough to move forward. Claire and Lily sat together in their living room, the soft hum of life returning around them. It was a moment of peace, of quiet reflection after the storm. There would be more challenges ahead, more truths to uncover, but they had survived. The missing years were never going to be easy to forget. But Claire had learned that healing didn't always come with answers. It came with love, with patience, and with the strength to face the future, no matter how uncertain it was. Together, they would rebuild. And together, they would find their way.